Hi, I'm Daz, and on the bench today is something that's scared me off for 4 years, and that is a Robuk RK3. Well, I've made a start on working on the electronics now. You can see that the capacitors are much physically smaller in size, especially electrolytics, so that gives me a chance to have more room. I've been tracing some of the circuit as well and confirming component values, just so I can make a note of them, and I'll have to show you later. I've any right to. What else can I say really? Just got to do the main smoothing electrolytic really. I've changed one or two resistors. Things like dropper resistors I'm always going to change. Some of the anode resistors I've changed as well, and the record resistor as well. Working up this way isn't very good because, well, gravity means the solder's naturally trying to drop, so it's not made life very easy at all. So yeah, you can see some more of the decoupling capacitors. That's a 0.1 smoothing for the bias and Magic Eye circuit. These are 47 nanofarads in lieu of the 50 nanofarads. So I've changed the 4K7 dropper resistor there, and you can see that I have changed the anode resistor there, and also I've changed at another point which I can't see right now. Oh, there it is, the 180. That's the equalisation coil for changing equalisation. I can see a little germanium diode down here, which is probably just out of view. So yeah, by the way, that's the bias coil if I hadn't said. So yeah, the board looks a lot less cluttered now, so it's a little bit easy to work on, but I must admit it is hard work testing resistors. There's a record, is it showing up? There's a record resistor here. That's the record resistor for the head, and that was a bit of a pain to get to. That was quite out, so I thought I'd better change that, because otherwise we're going to end up with it being undercooked when we think that we're correct. Because the thing is, there is no adjustments on this whatsoever to set the recording level or anything. So if something's not right, you're not going to get the right level of record. So in lieu of the can of 3 8 microfarads, I've used 10. I was considering using more capacitance, but I guess if 8 was enough smoothing, I don't think increasing it much more is going to help with the signal to noise ratio on this. A lot of these capacitors that look like resistors, which are quite fun. What else can I tell you? That's about it really. I just need to think about changing the main can, and then do a power up and see what happens. Just a quick look at the wiring on these pots. So there's a couple of 220k resistors in those sleeves, so you can select the ground and mic as inputs. There's a lot of jumping of the grounds. You can see the ground jump around the pots there, round to the microphone socket. So that's just hit it, so that should make a nice clonk on the audio. Okay, here's the power supply. So here's the transformer windings, it's looped onto the rectifier. Here's each end of the centre tap going to the anodes of the valve. Then the cathode is picked up here and returned to one side of the capacitor, which is 50 microfarad. The 50 microfarad, it's a dual. Then it goes to the dropper resistor, which is 1k on the transformer, and then back again. And the supply, HT supply for the board, is picked up from the transformer end. Interestingly, the centre tap is earthed to the chassis, and then there's an earth from this capacitor to the chassis as well. Then the chassis is mounted on insulated standoffs. Yep, that's clever, isn't it? So it's sort of making contact to ground through the screws, basically, each side. So that may not be a reliable way of getting the ground from this power supply, in my opinion, but anyway, there's not a lot of wires to play with unless I unsolder them from the main switch, and that's a complete pain to get at. So yeah, this tape recorder is a pain, isn't it? I've drawn a quick block diagram of the Robuk RK3. Right, when we're playing back, the head will be connected to the first half of the ECC83 triode. That forms your mic head amp. It's just a straightforward amplifier. That goes through this pot, which controls your volume. You can also add gram to it while you're playing back if you want. You can do. This just then goes to the second half of the EC83, which is an equalisation amp. That feeds the ECL82 triode, which is in with the ECL82 obviously, and that's sort of your line output amp, but there's a feedback circuit between it to adjust the equalisation in playback and record. And of course that varies on depending on what sort of tape speed you're running. From the triode line amp, it then goes through a second volume control called monitor for varying the volume when you're actually recording, so that you can turn it down or monitor the recording. And there's a tone control, which is a simple capacitor and variable resistor, just to take the top off the audio. There's an ECL82 pentode, which is the output to the loudspeaker. That only gives just over a watt. I was quite disappointed about that. But there you go. So that's basically what's happening in playback. When you go to record, this mic head amp is then going to amplify the input to the mic. That is then presented to the volume control, which is your record level for the microphone, but you've got a gram input as well. So you can mix gram and record, so you can sing along if you want. 1960s karaoke. That then is fed to the second half of the ECC83 and the ECL triode. These now are becoming your record amplifier, and that drives via the switch here. It drives the VU meter via a germanium diode, so that you get a reading of what the level is. Then it goes via resistor into the head to give you the audio. And then we've got the EL84, which is switched on, the HG switch to these two, so they only come on record. So this produces your high frequency bias signal. It drives the erase head, which obviously erases the tape. And then there's a tap from it via a capacitor to mix a bit of the bias in with the audio signal to give you the correct biasing and make the recording on the tape linear. Anyway, I hope that helps. I think I've explained that correctly. So there we go, it gives you a little idea of what the parts inside the tape recorder do. Okay, so this is my first run up. The HT is 307 from the rectifier and 272 on the other side of the 1K resistor. So I'm keeping my fingers well away from this. Default position when you put this on into stop mode is the microphone is connected, so it then becomes a PA amplifier, and as you can hear, it is amplifying. So, you know, at least we've got some progress, and it is actually doing something, well, feeding back. The microphone connections were broken at the microphone end and at the plug end, but I haven't put the microphone fully back together, but at least the capsule's working. So there we go. So I suppose the next thing is to perhaps try playing a tape, if I can get it together enough to do so. Well, and I'm having fun with this. I've got a problem with the I've tried changing speed, and what's happening is the idler wheel is not engaging properly, so I'm not quite sure what that is, whether it's due to the spring not pulling it in properly or whether there's a little bit off that tape so it's getting caught. It is a bit vicious with the tape. I've already had one accident with it. Of course the brakes aren't ideal, but ooh, a bit vicious. That's about all I'm going to play, even though it's the wrong speed, but hey, at least it's playing. The output seems to saturate really quickly, and I don't know why that is. When I have to put the volume up all the way really to get much audio level, and I think there's evidence that the output stage is clipping, so not brilliant, but hey, it's working. Plus I've got that age-old problem again. Squeaky, squeaky, squeaky. So I don't know, interesting. Let's see what happens. Well, the magic eye is quite dim. I don't know if it's showing up on here or not, but 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. There's a lot of hum pickup. 1 2 1 2 1 2, and there's no deflection on the magic eye at all. No deflection at all on the magic eye. So I'm guessing what the record level should be. I wonder what's gone wrong there. Germanium diode faulty? Maybe. Okay, let's pull this microphone out. It's a lot of hum pickup, but when the microphone's not plugged in, it actually puts a short circuit across the mic input. And I'm not surprised really. Right, let's do a rewind. Let's just see if we've got a recording. What's in? I don't know if it's showing up on here or not, but 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. There's a lot of hum pickup. 1 2 1 2 1 2, and there's no deflection on the magic eye at all. Good. Okay, well at least the bias oscillator must be working to get a recording, so it's not exactly fantastic. There's one hell of a lot of hum pickup on this, and as I said, germanium diode maybe has gone on the magic eye, because if there's a signal going to the record head, it should be making its way to the magic eye. So I wonder if the germanium diode has gone kaputsky. Anyway, more work needed, I think. Well, I've got the diode out, no component detected. Right, well that's obviously gone open circuit. Funny little thing, isn't it? No, not too close. Won't focus. Yeah, 1962 germanium diode. Well, there we go, diode. So the cathode is the red. Interesting thing, when I look at the forward volt drop, it seems awfully high, but when I measure it on another meter, it's about 0.3. It must be something to do with the current that's going through it. Anyway, I know the band is the one that's got to go to the audio input from the resistor. What value is that? 39k. I have replaced the germanium diode and we now have a working meter. Well, if I could see it, it's ever so dim, but obviously I've got a lot of lights on this bench as well, but at least I can set the recording level now. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Yeah, it's funny how germanium diodes just fail like that. All the valves work and the semiconductors have failed. When we look at the screen in here, it's not particularly well thought, I don't think. This is the microphone socket, so this is going to be the most sensitive point. And look, the screen cable is right back here, and you've got this massive grey aerial here, so, you know, I'm not very impressed by that. And of course, this is the mixing circuit, so at least it is actually at a higher level. It's more at a line level, so that's not so sensitive, but you know, I honestly think that should have been screened somehow, right up to that microphone. And that's why they probably put the tin plate in. Plus you've got this motor right next to it, so you know, as for hum pickup, well, I'm not surprised really that we're hearing a little bit of hum pickup. I'm just looking at this again, this idler wheel and the spring. I have got it a lot better than it was. It kept sticking, so hopefully I've bent enough bits to back into shape for it to be okay now, because if this isn't pulling in, it's not going to put enough tension. Now obviously I've got a less than perfect idler wheel, and I need the idler wheel to pull in and make contact as much as possible. We've got a very long spring here, and I've actually swapped it off the other unit, so I think that'll be alright now. Well, I think I've got the drive as best as I can for now. Now, the audio output is quite distorted, even with the internal speaker. There isn't a lot of oomph there, so I've plugged in the external amplifier to it, and the line output sounds fine. So it is possible there's something wrong with the ECL82. There could be something wrong with that. Could have a faulty electrode or something. Obviously the coupling capacitor has been changed, so it's not been biased incorrectly, or at least it shouldn't be. So I guess that's what we'll have a look at next. The feature of this having an amplifier through it is actually quite good. Having an amplifier setting, because I can put inputs in even with no tapes and just check to see what the output stage is doing. But it just seems so weedy. Doesn't seem like I'm getting more than a few hundred milliwatts before it's clipping. I know there's no feedback on this one, but odd. Well, I'm using the gram input, and that is really clipping really hard. I've changed the cathode resistor for a new 680. It had gone up 10-15%, but yeah, this just doesn't seem to have a lot of oomph, and I'm not quite sure why yet. It's clipping hard because the HT is dropping. In a Class A, the HT shouldn't be wiggling at all. So once you start to hit the end, then you know that the clipping point, you know that you are, because the HT will vary up and down, so you're cutting the valve off probably. So more work to do on that, I guess. So pre-clip about 5.5 volts peak to peak. That's at 400 Hertz. It seems to change according to what frequency I'm on. Yeah, it falls a lot off at high frequency, and at bass it gets bigger, which might explain why the bass was being clipped. But at 400 Hertz, that's only just over a watt. That seems lower than it should be to me. Well, I'm just having a look at the output from the transformer, and this waveform here is the actual anode of the valve. And you can see it comes down just below 100 volts and rises up to 400. It looks fairly normal, what I'd expect, so I don't have an explanation whether the 1 watt is what you'd expect. The interesting thing through the gram at the moment, I thought the equalisation circuit, or some of it, was out of circuit right now, but maybe it isn't, because the frequency response is anything but flat at the moment. So if I go towards 100 Hertz, you can see that it's increasing, and as if we go up in frequency, you can see the amplitude is increasing again, and you can hear the transformer. So all very interesting, but isn't really answering my question why I've only got about a watt. But I've always been disappointed by the output of an ECL82, to be honest. It never seemed as high as I thought it should be. So oh hey ho. Okay, I'm just doing a test recording. I'm going to put the tape recorder away for the moment and come back to it another time, but I've still got problems with squeak. I've cleaned everything, but still get tape squeak, and I'm using a different tape. The idler wheel sometimes still slips on the slower speed, and the amplifier, I can't get more than a 1 watt from it, but I think that's about right. So I'm a little bit disappointed really, but there we go. I suppose you can have a bit of fun with this, because you can sing with the music as well. If I open up the microphone, I know I'm over modulating a bit, but you can mix the two. One, two, three, over modulated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh my goodness. Right. Lovely. music as well. If I open up the microphone, I know I'm over-modulating a bit, but you can mix the two. One, two, three, over-modulated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, it basically works, doesn't it? That's the fast forward, and that just doesn't look very good. There's just not enough tension on this. Let's rewind. Good grief. I think it's going to take off in a minute. Well, there we go. Let's turn the monitor down. There we go. That's the Robuk RK3. It sort of works, but I think I'm going to put this down as fail because there's still many problems with it. I have spent a week on this, and I'm now wishing I'd spent that week on another tape recorder. But I was curious about this one in any case, so I suppose it's been a bit of fun finding out about it. But you know, idler wheel, tape path squeak, I seem to have a few little problems to sort out. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.